Uh, if this works out well, Michael, this will be good with Kirsten.
Yeah,
What do you
exactly.
think,
I think
Steph?
it's good for symphony folks to just kind of get used to doing this, and because we'll be doing some other things chamber-wise, and frankly, I expect orchestrally as well.
Right. If this works well, Michael, this will be good with Kirsten. That'll be good.
So is it weird, the little theme folks to just kind of get used to doing?
I hear somebody has video on or a sound on. If it's a phone or something.
I don't know why that popped up.
I hear it.
It's off.
Okay, sweet. 7:01, y'all ready to go?
You tell me.
Sure. We're here. Let's go. Hi, everyone. You're good. We're on.
We're on?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everybody. This is Michael Butterman, music director of the Shreveport Symphony Orchestra, welcoming you to a live stream with the Carrefour Chamber Music Project. We are pleased today to introduce our audience to those that have already been enjoying some broadcasts from the Carrefour Chamber Music Project over the summer. And we have two piano quartets to share with you here this evening. One you probably know, one I'm almost certain you don't. Music by Johannes Brahms, but also Dora Pejačević, a Croatian composer that we're going to hear a little bit more about in just a moment. So before we get to that, though, for those that don't know, maybe I could just introduce Robert Cruz, who is one of the founders of the actual. Let me introduce the people that are on the screen right now. We have Robert Cruz, pianist. We have Brett Andrews, who is a cellist and operations manager of the Shreveport Symphony. We have Michelle Gunn, who's a violist and member of the Shreveport Symphony. You will also see on this video Jennifer Carcillo, violinist in the Shreveport Symphony, who is unable to be on this Zoom broadcast here that we are doing this evening. She's tending to some family business out in California. In fact, she recorded this, or you all recorded this just the day before she was to leave, the day before Laura, as a matter of fact. But she recorded this. Getting back to the initial question, tell me a little bit about Carrefour Chamber Music Project, how it started, and how much you have done up to this point.
Sure. So Brett and I, when things started to get canceled back in March when the pandemic started, Brett and I had a similar idea to try to start some live stream concerts to try to keep that audience connection going. And so we scheduled a couple of concerts and we're ready to go. But then the Sunday before, the stay-at-home order got put into effect.
Right.
So we had to cancel that first series and went through stay-at-home and phase one of reopening. And then when we started to hit phase two, Brett and I regrouped and talked about it. And we were really both very passionate about maintaining that sense of community. The community that happens when there's an audience with a common purpose watching a performance, and how then that community kind of spreads out and creates the larger community and embraces kind of the entire Shreveport community. And as an effort to try to maintain that and encourage that during this difficult time, we decided to go with a chamber music series. So we scheduled, again, a couple concerts for live streaming. We did a program of Haydn and Dvorak piano trios. Brett and I have started on a series of the complete Beethoven works for cello and piano. We've done 2 of those so far and live to tell about it. And then we had back in August, we had a cabaret with 4 local performers that have been in various theaters locally. So we've had some really exciting stuff happening over the summer. And tonight actually marks the beginning of our fall 2020 season from now through December.
Excellent. Well, in fact, this is not officially a Shreveport Symphony broadcast, but it is the sort of thing that we will be engaging in as well, in at least in the fall, as we are, unable to gather in any large numbers to enjoy music. But I think it's a fantastic way for people to continue to stay connected to the idea of live performances of music. And in fact, there is an interactive component to tonight's broadcast. I keep calling it broadcast, but a live stream. And that is that you can type in questions to the chat functions if you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube, and we will get those questions. We will see them and we'll be able to answer them in the breaks that we'll be taking between the movements. So we're going to start with music by Dora Pejačević. So first of all, we're going to hear two piano quartets. I guess I should ask about that first of all. They're in the realm of chamber music. Their piano trios are pretty ubiquitous. That's a piano and a violin and a cello. And actually, there's a number of really wonderful piano quintets as well, which is basically a string quartet combined with a piano. But a piano quartet is sort of a hybrid of those ideas, isn't it? I mean, it's not, you couldn't take the piano out and you wouldn't have a full string quartet, but you'd have this, this trio, I guess.
It's missing one wheel almost without the second violin.
Kind of, yes, right. So Brahms wrote a number of these. I guess he wrote three, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is that correct? The third that we're going to be hearing. So Pejačević, then Dora Pejačević, Croatian composer. I know. Why don't any of you tell me a little bit more about this composer? Put her into some kind of context for us to understand.
Well, Robert, I'm going to let you just take it all over, but you did come to us with this piece. We were we didn't know who she was either.
Yeah. It's a classic question. Which is my fault, actually. And I knew nothing about her before we embarked on this. We had decided to do the Brahms C minor, which is a big staple of piano quartet rep. And it's a pretty hefty work. It's at least 30 minutes long. And so we're looking for something to pair with it that was also with that piano quartet scoring. And most piano quartets tend to be on the heftier side of the spectrum. And so I came across this in my research, this Pejačević quartet, which was about 20 minutes. And while it's sort of in that like Germanic sort of axis, it still has a different slant to it. She was a Croatian by blood. She was born in 1885. Her dad was Croatian count actually, and her mother was Hungarian. And she ended up studying at the Munich Conservatory and had a fairly substantial output compositionally. She has this piano quartet, a piano quintet, a cello sonata. Her biggest work is actually a symphony, which is a staple actually over in Croatia, her symphony in F sharp minor. But she died actually tragically in 1924, shortly after giving birth to her first child. Which cut short her career. So the piano quartet is from 1908. So it's around the time of Mahler, Richard Strauss, and it has that sort of influence in it. And it also has a sort of folksy feel in the third movement, the minuet movement. But it's folksy in that Mahler sort of almost twisted sort of way from that era. And it's a really engaging piece, and she has a really lush post-romantic harmonic language. It really brings out.
You would say it's nothing of the expressionist style that we hear from.
No, it isn't. Though Schoenberg was actually familiar with her music, and depending on your source, he either had positive or negative things to say about it, for what it's worth. But yeah.
So to put that into context, Brahms passed away in 1897. So this is just 11 years after, I guess, his passing. And although the quartet that we're going to hear dates from some years before that, in fact, from Brahms. So maybe we should just let the music speak for itself. This is, shall we just play the first two movements I think we're going to do of the Pejačević quartet. There are four total, so we'll play two, then we'll kind of come back, we'll take a little, I don't know, third inning stretch or something, and answer any questions that people might have and just kind of react to what's going on, and then maybe kind of set up the third and fourth movements just a touch. So shall we just get to it? These are the first and second movements of the piano quartet in D minor by Dora Pejačević.
Hi.
Really remarkable music, I think, and beautiful music. In fact, a number of our listeners, watchers, have commented that they're finding it very beautiful to listen to. They like how the composer seems to give each instrument its own voice, which I guess is another way of saying that there's a lot of contrapuntal writing, or at least writing where one instrument kind of turns over the main subject to another. And you've highlighted that a lot of times with the way that you've filmed this, with the camera work that you've done. Can we just talk about the technical side of this for a second? I mean, you did this without bringing a production company in, right? I mean, this was.
Yeah, we definitely did this without bringing a production company in.
How did you do it? What was the setup?
Wow. Well, we had a big different plan yesterday to begin with. So, of course, doing this together has been a whole new experience. It's basically learning an entire area that any of us have ever really had to deal with a lot. We were just talking today, figuring out how to get this Zoom thing going on was in itself quite an ordeal. But I've come to find it's pretty amazing the things that we can do, even just from our homes. As you've seen in the past, the symphony in the past few months, we've done these collaborative videos where everyone's coming from their own living room playing music together. And because things like that are so not easy, but readily available now, it really gives us a way to outreach to so many people, more than we ever could have, actually. But again, it's all new, so if you have any technical difficulties that you're seeing, I apologize. We're also in Louisiana right now, and we had our internet is very spotty at the moment because of recent events, so it's coming through.
Well, I think that side is working beautifully. Another thing that's new about this when you see it is, of course, the fact that everyone is wearing a mask, in case one didn't realize when this was filmed, that give you some idea. Can you just talk for a second about what if anything that does to the experience of playing? First of all, are you a little farther away from each other than you would typically?
Yeah,
definitely.
And you were performing in or recording this in Emmett Hook Center, so people that know that center know that it's fairly dry there, actually, acoustically, I think.
It is.
And so being farther apart, did that any challenges, benefits?
Well, for me, it was hard for me to hear sometimes Jennifer sitting across the stage from me.
Yeah.
I mean, she was maybe 10, 12 feet away from me,
Right.
but because I was on one side of the ensemble and she was on the other side, it was sometimes hard to hear. So I was relying more on Brett and Robert to be able to stay together.
What about the actual process?
That overall was kind of like the theme even throughout rehearsals, because in rehearsals we were spaced farther apart, and it was hard to get a sense of the complete ensemble going on at once, because so you really had like Rochelle said, latch on to a buddy and kind of go through the piece with them.
Chamber music really is like a very intimate thing between the musicians when you're playing. It's only 3 or 4 of you that are creating something together. And usually we try to be as close as possible to each other to really, you can feel each other's body language and things like that much more. And having so much more space between us, it was really kind of a domino. You need to rely on this person who's then going to rely on this person.
But also we rely a lot on facial cues. And so the masks were covering up half of our face.
Right.
So that brought in another element.
So it's hard to communicate, obviously, through that with that other nonverbal, way that we communicate with one another. I'm guessing, though, for the physical playing wasn't really affected in the case of Robert or Brett. But how about you, Michelle? I mean, you put this right under your chin. Was there any kind of issue with the mask itself?
Not with the instrument, but I do normally wear glasses, and that day, for some reason, my mask did not want to adjust in the way that would keep my glasses from fogging up. So fortunately, I see well enough without the glasses that I could, record without them. But that was the only problem.
Well, let's continue with the remaining two movements of this piano quartet by Pejačević. So we're going to hear a third movement, which is a minuet, which is a little bit unusual for 1908, seems to me. Certainly late romantic composers would have chosen a scherzo. Brahms did, and then there's a rondo that closes it out. Tell me a little bit about those two movements, especially I guess the rondo. Robert, you were talking a moment ago with me about the way that there are a lot of layers of texture to this.
So it's as though she has a Mozart element, or even Mahler does this sometimes too. Like there's just so much stuff going on vertically at once that it can be hard to pinpoint what is the main theme. So like she'll have the opening rondo theme, this chunk 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 chunk, but each time it comes back, there's like not just one counter melody, but multiple counter melodies. And even within the piano part, it's actually shockingly contrapuntal in terms of the activity.
Fascinating. All right, well, let's listen for this sort of somewhat old-fashioned minuet, followed by the multi-layered rondo that ends the piano quartet in D minor by Dora Pejačević. And we have just heard the piano quartet in D minor by Croatian composer Dora Pejačević, that piece written in 1908. And I think a remarkably beautiful piece. We had at least one comment from a viewer that said something to the effect, I don't have it in front of me, but it's unfamiliar but yet familiar at the same time. They don't know this particular piece, but there's enough about it that seems like music that they do know, that it seems like it's a familiar style somehow. Really just a wonderful find, you guys. I think you should be proud that you were able to share it with us. At least I will speak for myself and say it's the first music of hers that I've been made aware of. So thank you for doing so. We are going to follow that with music by a composer whose music we know quite well, Johannes Brahms. His piano quartet in C minor, sometimes called number 3, published in 1875, although written and begun some years earlier, quite a number of years earlier, in fact. Someone want to tell us a little bit about the origins of the composition, or the beginning of the composition of this piece?
Robert, you can't tell I'm looking down at you, and from this picture to that one.
So this particular piece, Brahms started, he was very good friends with the Schumanns. Robert Schumann took him under his wing, and he had this romantic fascination / obsession with Robert Schumann's wife, Clara. As it turned out, Schumann ended up being committed to an insane asylum toward the end of his life, which left Clara alone with their many children. And so Brahms basically became a sort of housekeeper to the Schumanns. He lived there and helped manage and run things. And while he was there, he started a piano quartet in C sharp minor. And I'm not aware of like how far he made it through it. But that eventually became what we now know as the C minor piano quartet that we're hearing tonight. And so it's from a time when he was really obsessing over his infatuation with Clara, this unattainable wife of the composer he admired more than anyone else in the world. And so this quartet kind of was his musical way of working that out. And he quipped later on in life by comparing it to this Goethe's story of Werther, who the young poet who has this fascination with the wife of an admired colleague, and Werther actually ends up shooting himself at the end of the story, which Brahms didn't. He went on to have many more years of composition, including this piece. So that's kind of the gist of the background of it.
Well, he even goes so far. This is a time when Brahms was very aware of musical mottos and things like frei aber froh, F-A-F, and F-A-E, frei aber einsam, which is Joachim's. And he actually uses a Clara motive, if I'm not mistaken, in this quartet.
He does, which actually in the C sharp minor version is more apparent because it matches the actual typical pitches of the Clara motive. So when it gets bumped down in C minor, it kind of obscures that, which is an interesting take on how his sort of perspective changed over time.
But C minor is a kind of impactful and meaningful. I mean, there's levels of meaning to almost everything that Brahms did, and we know that Brahms very much felt in the shadow of Beethoven as a symphonist for the first 40 some years of his life, and probably maybe it's his whole life for all I know. C minor is a big key for Beethoven. I mean, that's the key of the Fifth Symphony, for example. And I have to believe I don't know, whenever he writes in C minor, he must be conscious of Beethoven somehow.
I would imagine so, yeah. I mean, along the lines of like, if I'm going to do something great, it's going to be in C minor because that's what Beethoven did. So
it's a profound key, yes, indeed. So 3 of the 4 movements are in C minor. And we have this wonderful scherzo. So we're going to actually hear just the first and second movements. The second movement being this rather quicksilver scherzo. And then we will take another break. So if you have comments and questions that you'd like us to get to in the interval between the second and third movements, just go ahead and put them into the chat. This is streaming on several different platforms, but we're watching all of them, so we will be able to kind of collect those and share them with each other and with you. So, without further ado, the first and second movements of Brahms' Opus 60, the piano quartet in C minor. Yeah, they're back. So we've heard the first and second movements of Brahms' Piano Quartet in C minor, ending with that fantastic scherzo. We are going to move on in just a moment to the next two movements, the last two movements, the third and fourth movements. Let's just start with a little bit of what we're going to hear at the beginning of this third movement. A beautiful moment for cello. Brett, you got anything to share with us about playing this this opening solo that comes up?
Absolutely. The third movement of this piece is one of those kind of bread and butter movements for cellists. One of those big moments where you really get to show what the instrument can do and not just be that supporting structure underneath everything. The melody it's gorgeous. It's a slow movement, but he marks it as an andante, which we generally think of as kind of a walking tempo. So it's really not a slow movement. It's just a beautiful love melody. But it's based on these falling thirds. It starts as major thirds that then become minor thirds, which I think is not the thirds aspect, but that getting smaller really has to do a lot with this the piece, because we were talking about how he has this feeling for Clara and such, but this movement is so inside. It's feelings that are inside of him that he's just can't really let out. Kind of like the Beethoven symphony that begins in C minor. Not to give away how this one ends. And so this movement really, it's that repressed love for Clara, but it's still beautiful. So it's falling into itself while still having this gracious beauty to it. And so much fun to play.
I imagine it is. It's even more fun to hear. I can say, listen to. So that the idea of thirds, and third relationships is. That's very inside baseball. That's just so much a part of what Brahms writes, both melodically and also harmonically. So all these movements are in C minor except for this one, which is an E major, right? So that's a third away from each other. Although not an E flat, right? Which would be part of the C minor triad. So while we're talking about inside things, inside baseball, we were discussing a little while ago the way that Brahms writes for these various instruments. You've said a little bit about the cello writing. I wonder, Michelle, if you could tell us a little bit about how you as a violist feel about Brahms's writing, either in this piece or just in general. Viola can often be given parts that are perhaps not as melodic as the violins or the cellos get, for that matter. But I don't think that's necessarily the case in Brahms' writing so much.
Right. No, Brahms definitely gives the viola some moments to shine occasionally. In this third movement, it's mostly the violin and cello that have duos going on for a lot of it, but there is one moment where the viola gets to kind of come out of the shadows for a second, and then it goes back to to the violin and cello. But I mean, viola for me, it's always that instrument that you don't really notice if it's there, but you do notice if it's gone.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I like that Brahms has used, you know, that aspect of the viola to just fill in some of the inner stuff that needs to be there.
Well, I think if you want to use choral parts as analogies here, you know, the cello can be kind of a beautiful singing tenor line a lot of times, getting into the baritone sometimes. But I mean, the altos are clear, or the violas rather, are clearly sort of the alto line. And Brahms had a background as a choral conductor and choral composer. I'm pretty sure that his study, for that matter, of the contrapuntal music of Bach and Schütz and Handel, for that matter, I think probably contributed to the way that he writes for inner voices a lot. On the other hand, we know he was a pianist as his own instrument. Robert, tell me a little bit about playing Brahms as a pianist. Do you find that sometimes when you hear music by, let's say, Liszt or Rachmaninoff, great pianists, a lot of pianists will say it sounds difficult, and it is difficult, but it sort of fits. I have never heard a pianist say that about Brahms so much. I know you were telling me also that organ is really your original keyboard instrument, I guess. How does Brahms keyboard writing sort of fit the hand? In your opinion?
For me personally, it fits pretty well. Certainly better than the Pejačević. The Pejačević piano writing is actually kind of gnarly and obtuse in some regards. But the Brahms piano writing, like all of his part writing, is very intuitive at a certain level. Like it lies well. I wouldn't say it's a pleasure to play, but it's certainly more straightforward than, say, for instance, like working on the Beethoven with Brett. Like Beethoven's piano writing can be awkward, but Brahms is just very straightforward to me, at least.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to the concluding two movements of the piano quartet in C minor, beginning with this gorgeous third movement that we talked about a moment ago, and then the concluding movement again in C minor. And we've just heard the conclusion of Brahms' Piano Quartet in C minor. We have heard Jennifer Carcillo, violinist, Michelle Gunn, violist, Brett Andrews, cellist, and Robert Cruz, pianist, who collectively representing the Carrefour Chamber Music Project. And we're delighted to be able to share this music with our Shreveport Symphony family as well this evening. And hope that you've enjoyed both that piece and the piece with which the concert opened, the trio in D minor by, the quartet in D minor by Dora Pejačević. Robert, what is coming up? This is not the last that we are going to hear from the Carrefour Chamber Music Project. What else do you have?
No, certainly not. Actually, let's throw it to Michelle because she has the next Carrefour concert.
Yes, it'll be September 17th. Also, we'll be on the Carrefour Facebook page live, and I'll be playing two pieces by Bloch, who's a Jewish composer, and he wrote the Suite Hebraic and Meditation and Processional, and then that will be followed by the Rebecca Clark Sonata for viola and piano, and Robert will be accompanying me on that recital. That will be so much fun.
I know you have things planned throughout the rest of the fall as well. And there's a lot coming up for the Shreveport Symphony as well, which is going to be announced soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that announcement. And there will be certainly a lot of music to enjoy coming up soon. We want to thank everybody for participating this evening and for sharing your comments with us. Brett, you were telling me, who do we have to thank for their well wishes and comments this evening?
Certainly, we had lots of comments from Tronny Gunn, Julia Clancy, thanks a lot. Nadine Charity, as well. I'm scrolling through. Tracy Mouse, thank you so much. I want to see Taylor soon. We'll see. We'll talk to her soon. Stephen McCollum, thank you so much. As well as Garnet Gunn. Let's see here. Melanie Henderson McLeod, thank you. Elliot Haas, one of our symphony members, actually, a cellist in the symphony as well. Thanks so much for commenting on here and watching everything. Maria English, tell Alan hello as well. I hope he's doing good. I hope he's still playing violin for sure. If not, give me a call and we'll work on that. Yeah, thanks to everybody for participating in the live chat. This has been a really great experience for us. And if you want to throw some more things in there, I'll be online for about 10 minutes more afterwards to answer any questions, or if you have, or you just want to chat for a moment, I'll be here. Thanks so much for checking out our concert. We really appreciate it. And personally, I hope everyone is safe and well right now. Thanks.
Indeed, we all do. So again, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for taking some time this evening. Hope you've enjoyed the music, and we'll look forward to seeing you very soon.